Hello, everybody. I am Mrs. Kramer, and I work with Richmond Community High School and Armstrong High School as the theater arts teacher, and I'm happy to be with you today. So we're going to be talking about auditions today. Many of you will have to do an audition for your school play, or maybe just for a local production. But at any rate, auditions are very helpful for those of us in theater and even for other aspects. But what we're going to be talking about today are several things, but specifically how to choose an audition monologue, an audition piece for a monologue. And we're going to be talking about that today. In fact, choosing a monologue for an audition is probably the most important part of your audition. So we're going to be talking about that. One of the first things that you have to remember when you are choosing a monologue, you have to do your homework. What does that mean? That means that you need to know this particular play. If you're auditioning for a specific role, you want to know the style of the play. You want to know the role, the type of person that you're auditioning for. And both of those things can help you to decide what type of monologue that you want to do. In other words, let's say you're auditioning for a comedy, a modern comedy. Well, if you're auditioning for a modern comedy, you don't want to make the mistake of choosing a classical Shakespeare piece to perform, because it just wouldn't relate. And what the director is trying to do is to see if you fit into the play or for a certain role. The other thing is, let's say you're auditioning for a play that is filled with teenage actors. It's maybe something like High School Musical. Well, you don't want to choose a piece from the perspective of an adult. You want to choose something that's more from the perspective, obviously, of a teenager. So you want to make sure that your audition piece, your monologue, relates to the play or to the character for which you're auditioning. One of the second things you definitely need to think about is the length of the monologue. I'll talk a little bit more in depth about that in just a moment, but you want to pay attention specifically to the audition directives. Now, what does that mean? Oftentimes, when you're looking to go to an audition, they have specific guidelines in mind, like this is the monologue that we want you, or the type of monologue that we want you to do. Or they might say we want contrasting monologues. Now, what does that mean? That means essentially that you take maybe a comedy monologue and a drama monologue, and they want you to do like a 1-minute monologue of each of those so that they can get an idea of the scope of your ability. Like, wow, here they can do comedy, here they can do drama. So those are types of things to think about. So think about what they are requesting, all right? So thirdly, so what are some of the do's and don'ts of choosing a monologue for an audition? One of the things, as I said, you want to think about is the length of the monologue. I would recommend that you, number one, keep it short. Okay, you want to keep it short. Now, why is that? Well, first and foremost, it's just not a good idea to do a long monologue. In fact, if you cannot wow the director in less than a minute or in about a minute, then 2 or 3 or 4 or even 5 minutes is not really going to help you out in an audition. You have to be able to catch them and draw them in that first minute or two. And so having a long drawn out monologue doesn't really help you. The other thing is, when you have a shorter monologue, you can do a stronger focus on character. You can take your time with it. You can make it a little bit longer just by taking your time, pausing, thinking through things, making sure you're focusing on your facial reaction or expression, and the way you're standing, your body language. Perhaps if you forget something, just take a calm pause. You can take your time with it. Okay, shorter monologue you can take your time with. I highly recommend a shorter type of monologue for that reason. So one of the second things you need to think about, I would recommend to do is keep it short. Okay, another do is action. You want some sort of action in there. If you're just kind of standing up telling a story, then it's not really going to give you a lot necessarily to go on. What that means is what would be kind of the opposite of that would be focusing on character, not just telling a story. Now, maybe a character telling a story about their life, and that's fine. What you want to make sure is that you get, we'll talk about that in a second, but you get some emotional variety there. But you want to make sure there's action. Storytelling monologues are good, as I said, but they want to know what your character is doing in the monologue. So make sure there's something for them to do or to focus on. The third thing is definitely you want to make sure that there's variety in the monologue. Now, what does that look like? That means, okay, you heard the Volmers earlier, the teachers tell you that to tell a good story, you need you need like a rising action, and you need a climax, and you need a falling action, and you need to tell a story, right? So if any good monologue kind of has all of these different things. In other words, let's say you've got a monologue and you're angry. Okay, it's an angry monologue. Well, if you're yelling for 10 minutes or 10 minutes, obviously 2 minutes. If you're yelling for 2 minutes and you're very, very angry and you just keep your voice here and you don't even change it, you're kind of monotone and you're screaming and you're yelling, and this is the way that you want to get across your character, you're not, I mean, that may feel good emotionally to you to scream and yell and get that out, but that doesn't really give them a lot to go on as far as emotional variety. In fact, you're kind of monotone, and you're not showing them any type of I'm just trying to think of a different word than variety, but you're showing them less variety. Like a single, you're saying, okay, this one's angry, this one's sad, this one's happy. But you want more emotion than that and be much more in depth than that. So you want variety, you want to keep it short, and you want to have some action in there. You don't want to keep like the same emotion for an entire piece. So just be careful that there's some variety there. One of the other things that is very important is, so what makes a good monologue then, right? So we are going to be talking about preparing for your monologue and performing your monologue. But first, what about just finding your monologue? We already know that some of those things that we need to think about are, does the material showcase my abilities? Okay, that would be the first thing. There are actually, I've got you 3 things right here that you need to think about when you're choosing a monologue. Okay, so what questions should you ask yourself? I want you to think about, okay, so how does the material showcase my abilities? Obviously, your abilities. So how does this particular material showcase your abilities? What does that mean? That means that you need to choose a piece that lets you shine. So you want to kind of put your best foot forward, and the first step there is choosing just the right piece. So make sure you choose something that is showcasing your abilities. Secondly, why is this piece interesting? Okay, what is interesting about it? In fact, if you should never, ever, ever choose a piece or a monologue that you find boring. Okay, do not do that, because what happens is if you don't find it interesting, then whoever the listeners are not going to find that interesting. That's going to play directly to them as boring. So the director is going to look at that and say, okay, that's really boring. If you find it boring, they're going to find it boring. So find something that you can relate to in a sense. Never choose a piece just because you think you should choose this particular piece. This is the piece I should choose because of X, Y, and Z, or whatever the reason is. Just because you should choose it doesn't mean that's the one you'll need to choose. Choose something, again, that you understand. You don't want to choose a classical monologue, for instance, that you don't understand. You don't understand what he's saying, or you can't relate to the character, because, again, that will show in your performance. And so how does the material showcase your abilities? Why is this piece interesting? And how does the material fit the play? Now, we kind of talked about that, but if you're auditioning for a very specific role for a play with a specific style, your audition piece should reflect that style. So if you're doing, again, a comedic play, you want to try a comedic monologue. A comedic role, you want a comedic monologue. You don't want to do something from Shakespeare's Macbeth tragedy for a comedy. It just wouldn't fit. And the director is trying to essentially see you on the stage in a particular role with the rest of the cast that he's thinking about choosing. And it's your job to make sure that he sees that. So again, you need to make sure that this material fits the play you're auditioning for. So you want him to see you in that, right? So those are the three things. Choosing a monologue, you need to ask yourself, how does this material fit my abilities? Does it make me shine? Okay, why is this piece interesting? Oh, it's definitely very boring. You do not ever want to choose something like that. So how does the material fit the play? All right, if you're auditioning for a specific role or play, make sure your monologue suits that. So what I have done in this lesson is I've included, I think it's 5 monologues, 5 sample monologues, and they are attached in a document. You can take a look at those, and hopefully one of those will speak to you, and it'll be one that reaches out to you. But if not, I would encourage you to find something that suits you best. As I said, that's extremely important. In fact, I'll give you some websites you can go to, but even you can check in your local library. They have monologue books for very specific things. So check your local library for specific books on monologues, and they'll be able to help you for sure. The other thing, though, is I like to look online because you can see a lot of variety in a very short amount of time. One of the websites you can go to is stagemilk.com. Yes, that's stagemilk.com. Okay, and there's another one, monologueblogger.com. Monologueblogger.com. And again, I'll write these out for you. But thirdly, I found some at dramanotebook.com. Dramanotebook.com. So again, stagemilk.com, monologueblogger.com, and dramanotebook.com, or your local library. Maybe your school library has something. Maybe your drama teacher has a library of types of monologues, books that you could take with you and take a look at. But check out the ones that are in there, and if you don't like any of those, you're welcome to choose another one. But you are going to need to choose a monologue for this particular lesson. So I'll tell you what you're going to do with it, but essentially you need to choose your monologue. Then you need to ask yourself those questions. Remember, as you're choosing it, ask yourself those 3 questions. How does it showcase your abilities? Why is the piece interesting? And how does the material fit the play? You want to continue to ask yourself those 3 questions when you're looking for your monologue. So once you have chosen your monologue, then the work is done, right? No, hardly. In fact, the work is just beginning because you, again, I said, your audition, the most important thing that you can do is prepare that monologue. So what do you need to do next? You need to prepare that monologue. And in fact, let me see. When preparing your monologue, it's important, most important, that you center everything, like I said, not on the story, but on the character. That particular character that you are portraying. In fact, it's not just about learning the lines or learning the blocking or how to move or how to stand or even how to speak. It's essentially preparing that monologue to as you're representing a character. What you want to get across is that character and how well you are at becoming that character. So what are some things that you want to ask yourself when you're trying to understand a monologue? You're trying to understand where that person's coming from. You could ask yourself several questions. In fact, what you're trying to do essentially is create a 3-dimensional character. What does that mean? That means someone that is very well-rounded. You're trying to figure out who that is. And some monologues will give you lots of insight onto what that is or who that is, and some don't. So what I would like to do is have you look at, I've attached a sheet that's called character profile. The character profile sheet, all right, will give you some questions, again, that you need to ask yourself, and then you'll need to fill these out, all right? You'll need to fill out this complete this for your character. The first question you would ask yourself is, who is this character? Who am I? Who are they? And some of those things, that's the most detailed thing, but who is a character? What information do you know about them from this particular monologue? What details do you have to add to that? What do you have to create for that? So some are simple, they're right there in the monologue. Others you have to create and add. So you don't want to leave any details blank, though. It's important that you have, again, a three-dimensional, full, well-rounded character. So what is their name? Give them a name if they don't have one. What is their age? How old are they? Are they 15? Are they 23? Are they 87? You need to know kind of what their age is. It may not say exactly, but you can get an idea of roughly what age there is. What is their job? Again, if you're doing a teenager, maybe they're just a student, but what is their job? So another thing, what's their family makeup? You know, do they have a brother and a sister? Do they have a mom and a dad? Are their parents divorced? You know, what's that situation look like? Who is in their family? Does their grandparent live with them? You know, all these kinds of questions. So also, what is their background? That's very, very important. Are they rich? Are they poor? Do they come from a struggling background? Did they have a happy childhood or a bad childhood? Maybe there was some abuse there. What's their favorite memory? You know, you could even think of more specific things like that. Or what's their least favorite memory that they had growing up? And anyway, just some thoughts about who they are. And lastly, who is the character in the monologue talking to? So these are all who questions. Who is the character talking to in the monologue? Most often it's addressed to someone specific. So you need to be thinking about who are they talking to. Next, you need to be thinking about what. What is very important? What does your character want? What are they trying to achieve through this monologue? What's their goal? In other words, there's a reason why they're saying what they're saying. And oftentimes, if it's a monologue, they're giving a lot of thought and thinking through something. What are they thinking through? What is their goal? What is their aim? So what does the character want from this monologue? So who, what, and then when. When is very important, of course. When does the monologue take place? It might even be the time of day, not just the year, but it could be the year. Does this take place in 1776 or the Great Depression? Does this take place during the 1950s, during the 60s race riots? So what are some things that you could think about? When does this take place? So what is going on at that time in history? Or even you might even think about what time of day it is, might make a difference, or what time of the year. Is it cold? Is it hot? It depends on the monologue and what's important, but if there's anything significant about the time period. So who, what, when, and then obviously where. Where does the monologue take place? And is there anything significant about the location? What would be different? Let me see, for instance, you're doing a monologue of a teenager. Are they talking to their parent at their house? Or are they talking to their friend at school? Might be different where they are. So think about where they are in that particular situation. Now, why? Why is this character speaking? Again, that goes back to almost the what. What do they want? But why are they speaking? Okay, is there a goal in mind? So why are they doing this and why now? Why in this way? So I want you to think about the who, the what, the when, the where, and the why. And again, you'll get this worksheet. It's your character profile worksheet. Once you've thought through all of those details, then the very, very last question that you'll be asked is, how will you apply these details? So how will you apply these details to your monologue preparation? So think about all these things in preparing your monologue. And then obviously you're working on memorization, you're working on all these things. But again, character is what that director is going to see. And obviously, if you're going to do all this analyzing, you want to like this particular monologue. And again, you don't have to have a very long monologue to think all these things through. So lastly, obviously, I wanted to talk to you about performing. Obviously, performing and then evaluation finally. So performing the monologue. What is important about performing the monologue? Obviously, when you're preparing, I want to say one more thing about preparing that I don't want to forget, because this does go directly to your performance. When you're practicing, make sure that you're also practicing your slate. Now, what is a slate? Some of you may or may not know what that is. How I've heard it described is kind of like as a bookend. If there are bookends here, and there was a something holding up a book on this end and something holding up a bunch of books on this end, then you need to think about what's at the beginning and what is at the end. What is at the beginning of your monologue is your introduction. So you're introducing your monologue as you go out on, let's say, stage or go into the room for your audition. You're going to need to introduce yourself. Hello, my name is so-and-so. Give your full name, and I will be performing. Okay, name the piece. It has a particular name of the piece, or maybe even the play that it's from, and who wrote it. So those are 3 important things that you should say. Your name, obviously, introduce yourself. They might ask you that when you come in, but then before you perform, you want to make sure that you introduce your piece or slate your piece. Okay, so in the very beginning, you introduce your piece, and then at the very end, once you come out of character, you want to look at the director and acknowledge who's in the room and tell them, thank you very much for this audition. And then you can, if they have any questions or anything, they will probably ask you at that point, but then you can excuse yourself. But make sure that you say thank you at the end. What a lot of people want to do, I'll just show you briefly. What happens is someone goes in, hello, my name is so-and-so, performing this from this particular piece. Now, you may want to be able to go into character, per se. So you may want to put your head down, take a break, maybe inhale and exhale, and then you want to come up. Obviously, watch your posture, stand up straight, make sure you're projecting and articulating, speaking very, very clearly, okay? And then you want to present your piece in character. So at the very end, though, when you're finished, you may want to put your head down, okay? Come up, break character at that point, and then you can say, thank you very much. And that's the way you should do it. Now, very, very last thing is I've included in here a peer evaluation. Now, what does that look like? What I would like for you to do is I would like you to prepare your monologue piece. I would like you to present your monologue piece on video, and then I would like you to send it to a friend. Now, I want you to watch them do their monologue, and then you can do your monologue. But I also want them to do a peer evaluation on you. I've included a peer evaluation, specific questions and things they'll need to be looking at, and you'll need to be looking at in their monologue. So find a partner in this. Maybe you can choose something together that you can help each other do that. But so let me see. I think that's everything. But practice, practice, practice. People worry about nerves all the time. Everybody's nervous. So again, you want to remember to breathe in, exhale, take your time, but make sure you have practice, practice, practice. That's going to be the most important thing. So thank you very much for being here with me today and talking about audition monologues. I'll be back to talk to you about some other things shortly. Thank you very much.